You need a good stuffed pepper recipe because it's July, we're entering the heart of bell pepper season, so when you inevitably find yourself with a bunch of beautiful bell peppers, this is what you make. Now, I was craving arancini, but I also wanted to keep this summer body I worked so hard on. Stuff a risotto and a stuffed pepper and you kind of get a similar thing. So we're just gonna cut the tops off the bell peppers. So you just wanna get the core out and any of the rib that still might be in there, you just wanna tear it out. You also wanna get ones that are able to sort of stand on their own. Be sort of selective when you do the shopping for this. Set those hollowed out peppers off to the side, toss the guts. For the risotto, we're just gonna dice up our tops to the bell peppers up nice and fine. I have a small onion here, I'm gonna go the whole thing, otherwise a half of a medium onion and a few cloves of garlic. Again, I have like this tiny bits there, so I'm just gonna use a few. So since the tops are in this donut shape, I'm just gonna cut them into 4 straight pieces and then just slice those pieces into thin strips, then dice those strips into a small dice. Just make sure they're all of equal size so it blends in well with the risotto. Then get that into a bowl. Next up for the onion, we're just gonna cut the top off, cut it in half, remove the papers, cut thin slices around the curvature of the onion, and then cut that into a really fine dice. Then for the garlic cloves, just gonna slice them in half, remove their papers, and then slice them as thin as you can. And I don't usually add garlic to my risotto either, but I'm kind of just throwing a whole bunch of stuff in to make the risotto a little bit more of a pepper stuffing. Next up, we have Italian sausage. For me, it's the meat of choice. You know, sausage and peppers kind of go together. We have about 8 or 9 ounces of hot Italian sausage. You can use sweet, and I just want to remove it from its casing. Kind of like removing a lady's stocking. If, of course, she was a spicy Italian sausage. So now we've got our sausage, got our peppers, our veg, we've got our carnaroli rice, which is the best one for risotto. Some tomato passata. When the tomato is not really the star of the dish, that's when I kind of get lazy and buy a jar of passata rather than pureeing my own. Then I've got some wine, some Calabrian chilies. I got some chicken stock on the stove, a few things, some cheeses, some butter that's gonna go in at the end. I'm just gonna get a pan off to the side on medium-high heat to make our weekday sauce. We're gonna coat the bottom of the pan with some olive oil, and then we're just gonna add some slivered garlic, along with some basil stem to infuse that oil with those flavors. Once the garlic is lightly browned and the basil and the garlic has infused the oil, remove the basil, lower the heat, and then add in the tomato puree. Season the puree, and then bring that up to a simmer. And we're just gonna cook that to let those flavors come together while we make the rest of the risotto. Get a pan or a saucier over medium-high heat, something with a high rim and a lid. And once hot, add a little bit of olive oil and then add the Italian sausage. Break it up into a smaller mince that will incorporate better into the risotto. Season it with salt, and once you've got it into a mince, the meat, like any minced meat we're gonna cook, is gonna go through phases. First, the pink is gonna cook out, then the moisture releases and steams. Then once the moisture evaporates, that fat and oil remain, and that will begin to fry and brown the meat. We want a light brown on this meat. We don't want to dry it out too much, and then remove the sausage with a slotted spoon and try and keep as much of that fat as you can in the pan to give to the risotto. Then go in with the peppers, the onions, and the garlic. Season with a little bit of salt and cook until the vegetables are softened, about 2 to 3 minutes. Then if you like it hot, we're gonna go in with some Calabrian chili and get that mixed in. Then add in a cup of the carnaroli rice. Get the rice coated in that fat and toast for a minute or 2 until the risotto gives off a nutty aroma. Then we want to deglaze with white wine, and once that has almost reduced to nothing, add a few tablespoons of weekday sauce right into the pan, and then we're gonna go in with all of the stock, which is not how I usually show you how to make risotto. Usually you add the stock slowly to get a creamy consistency at the end, but since we aren't serving a plate of risotto alone, the creamy end consistency is not a priority here. Once simmering, place a lid on, drop the heat to low, cook for about 10 minutes, and then give it a taste. It should be soft on the outside, but crunchy on the inside, and there should be a good amount of liquid remaining to carry it through the bake and to compensate for the butter and cheese we'll add. Now we can return the sausage back into the risotto and turn the heat off and finish it like a normal risotto by adding a few tablespoons of cold butter in for richness and to cool that mixture down to prepare it for the cheese. Once the butter is completely worked into the risotto and it's slightly cooled, then we can go in and add 1 to 2 hefty handfuls of Parmigiano cheese or Pecorino, whichever you prefer. Then we're just gonna work that in, get it nice and melted. The risotto will thicken a bit, become more viscous, but still loose enough to carry it through the baking process. I'm gonna let that cool even more. We just got about 5 ounces of mozzarella, and I'm gonna cut that into a small dice so that it distributes evenly into the stuffed peppers. I'm just gonna add a touch of water to thin the risotto out just a little bit to compensate for the cooking time. It's gonna cook for about an hour in the oven. Then we can go ahead and add in the mozzarella right into the risotto and get that mixed in. Next up, I've got our baking vessel for the stuffed peppers. I want something with some height on the edges just so I can cover them and to allow the peppers to be able to cook through with some steam. So to create that steam, in goes some of that tomato sauce we made. Then we're gonna go with a little bit of water just to thin it out so it doesn't over reduce. Then we're gonna go in with our peppers. You could fit about 6 in here, but based on my measurement, that amount of risotto only fills about 5 bell peppers depending on their size, but we'll see. Then I'm gonna season the inside of the bell peppers with salt. So I'm gonna go ahead and just start stuffing the peppers. A little bit at a time at first, and then we can top them off at the end. And finally, some Parmesan cheese on top. Now to wrap it, we're gonna put a piece of parchment right on top, and then a piece of foil on top of that. Try and create a really tight seal. So I'm gonna put this into a 375-degree oven for 30 minutes. We're gonna place that onto a lower rack because the bottom of the pepper is like the densest and needs the most heat. We're gonna cook that covered for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, we're gonna pull it out of the oven. We're gonna remove the foil, and by now those peppers should be nice and steaming. All we're gonna do is add a little bit of olive oil to help those peppers brown a little bit. Then I'm gonna bump the heat up to 425 degrees, and we're gonna cook those peppers uncovered for an additional 30 minutes at least. And then we're gonna check back and see where we're at. After an hour of cooking, they should be golden on top and the peppers should be cooked through. Pull them out of the oven, let them cool, and then we can slice into one, and it's perfect. To plate, we're just gonna spoon some weekday sauce in the bottom of the plate, place 1 or 2 bell peppers right into it. I'm gonna cut some basil from my basil plant, garnish that on top, and then finish with some more cheese and a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. Pepper's not mush, but it's cooked through. The risotto is not mush. And best of all, it scratches that arancini itch. If you think about it, risotto compacted into a ball, kind of like arancini, except in a pepper. Recipe's gonna be down in the description. That's all that I have today. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care of yourself and go feed yourself.